You're listening to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans.
If you want to have guarantees, you have to buy a wash machine.
Fonte with a scooping header.
We don't lose a match, either we win or we learn. And today we learned.
It's infield to Mane, 25 yards out. Lovely ball for Bella. Onside, 1-0. Blue fast shot. Oh my word!
Unbelievable. We ran around the pitch like Bambi on ice. It was very, very embarrassing to watch.
And now, your host, Matt Markstone.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast and newsletter dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans, and available right here on southamptondelivery.com. My name is Matt Markstone. I am the host of the show, and no matter where you are, no matter how you may be listening, whether this is your first time or you've been here before, thanks for making the show part of your day. I hope that you enjoy it, even though we lost. We were 2-0 up. We were cruising down the freeway in California, not the countryside of England in the freezing rain, but down the US 101, sun shining, ocean to your right, sunrise coming up. And then halftime happened and the traffic built up and we couldn't get going again. The car broke down, may have thrown up once or twice. And by the end of it, it was not the trip that you had hoped we would be on. And the good news is that the road doesn't end. There are still games to be played and matches to be won and points to be earned. And maybe this is just a bit of a reality check. Maybe this will temper our expectations just a little bit. Whether that's good or bad, we will have to wait and see. But the good news is I have two guests on the show this week that will help us kind of sort it all out. So before I introduce them, I just want to say sorry to anyone who listened last week and got the overdubbed intro. My apologies for that. I had a bit of a nightmare last week. I also forgot to introduce and discuss and thank Chris Thomas, who is the newest patron of the show, joining us from Germany, actually. So thank you to Chris. He is the newest patron of the show, and he gets priority for having his questions answered on the show each and every week. He gets access to a private Discord channel that is just for patrons, and he gets access to special Patreon-only episodes of the show that come out once a month or so. If you want to join him, you can do that over at patreon.com/SFC delivery. There are, of course, links in the show notes, but no obligation. Just thanks for listening. And if you're really enjoying the show, leave a review on iTunes. That really does help. So on the show this week to discuss the loss is Carl Anka. Carl is the Athletic writer for Southampton. So he's covering the team for the Athletic this year. If you're not subscribed or you haven't used your free trial portion, you should check it out. You get access to all the back catalogs, so you can kind of look through and see the type of work that Carl is doing. If you enjoy it, there's a small fee to continue, but you can enjoy a free month. And I believe there's a discount code at the link that is in the show notes. But you can get his takes for free on Twitter at Anchorman616. And we discuss plenty of the match and what's going on around the team here on the show, which you can get obviously for free. So you can also follow him on Instagram at carl.anchor. I highly recommend it. It is enjoyable. And the special treat this week, I think, not that Carl's not special. I really enjoyed talking to Carl, but I don't often get to see Saints fans in person. I live in California, which means I oftentimes just get to watch matches by myself. And I talk to a lot of people on here. I'm fairly comfortable discussing things via Skype and everything else. But Mike Smale, who runs Matchday Vlogs, happened to be in LA this weekend for work. And so I took the trip down and we got to spend a couple of hours together just discussing all kinds of things, from creating shows like this and doing the vlogs and everything else to what's going on with Saints. We even talk about the Wolves match as well. So we have that interview or that discussion here for you. I will say it was live, so there is street noise. We were sitting outside at I won't say a cafe because it's a chain restaurant here in the States. So it was okay. The sandwich was good, but the company and the conversation were even better. So you can catch more of him by heading over to Match Vlogs on Twitter or Matchday Vlogs on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. You can subscribe to his YouTube channel. All of those links are in the show notes below. Mike does a great job of giving you and bringing you the matches each and every week that we are at St. Mary's. So head on over there and make sure you give him a follow and do that. So special thanks to Mike for taking time out of his work day to chat with me, to hang out. And I had a great time be sure to check out the video on his channel, as I said before. But anyway, we'll roll both interviews. We'll just roll them one into another. So enjoy it. Thanks a lot. And we'll talk to you on the other side. So welcome back to the Southampton Delivery Podcast. Carl Anka. You can find him on Twitter at Anchorman616 and on Instagram at carl.anchor. He is our writer for The Athletic. And Carl, it's a pleasure to talk to you. Welcome back to the show.
It's good to be back. Hello, everyone.
You are running from podcast to podcast, and in some non-Southampton related news, but some work-related news, you'll be joining or starting a Manchester United podcast very, very shortly. So congratulations on being given that.
Thank you very much. It's a huge honor. I will be working on some non-Manchester United podcasts in the summer. I can't reveal yet, hopefully, to keep everyone tidied off. Because obviously, what we're going to talk about over the summer, other than the Euros. Will you be watching the Euros, my friend?
I will. My goal is always to teach summer school during the Euros, because I can have all 3 games on during the day and nobody will say anything. So that's my plan.
Good.
I'm not sure if that's good for the youth of America, but I think they can get some education, some formation education, and how not to do things when you watch some of those teams defend. But anyway. But let's talk very, very briefly. I just wanted to congratulate you on that. And you've kind of been you've been busy. You've been running around from place to place and city to city, and you're currently in London. But we had the Wolves match over the weekend, and that's obviously what we're mostly here to talk about. But we looked so good for so long, for so many weeks. We looked like we were doing all the right things. And then for half of that match, we looked fine. And then it didn't quite work. But before we get to any of that, was there any surprise for you for the formation based on what Hasenhüttl said during the week that we came out and looked essentially the same as we had in recent weeks? And were you surprised by that at all?
No, I think what's going to go on, this is Southampton now. This is Southampton, the Ralph Hasenhüttl way he wants them to play. They're going to play in this 4-2-2-2. I think this is pretty much their best 11, with Stuart Armstrong playing on the right-hand side and Shane Long partnering Danny Ings. Shane Long being ahead of Danny Ings, so Ings can sort of play in the space behind after Shane Long gets loads of flick-ons. There's a little hint about the next article I'm writing. I think this is Southampton at their maximum. I think what you got in that first half was Southampton at their best and at their not so great best. So they were solid without being spectacular. They absolutely maximised their pieces. So Jan Bednarek getting a goal from a free kick was really, really fun, because that was something Ralph Hasenhüttl said he's been trying to work on since December or before December. I remember talking to Ralph about set pieces, and he said, this is good, but Bednarek hasn't got a goal yet. I'm working on this. Don't worry about it. And it finally came to pass. And I think, Armstrong now playing on the right-hand side. I do like Moussa Djenepo, but I think Armstrong on the right is a little bit better because it gives added defensive protection to Cedric. And it also allows Southampton to kind of play a quasi 4-3-3 when they need to swap around things and push Redmond up a little bit more. So I think for the first half, I was happy. I was cruising. Obviously, at the Athletic, we don't do match reports. We do sort of angled pieces or debriefs. And the piece I was going to write about was all about Shane Long and how he had to do the attack. So, at half time, I told my boss, this is great. I love when a plan comes together. I was texting my friend George, and I said, let's go to the pub. And I was, planning to go to the pub at 7 o'clock, straight after the game, after the press conference, because all my work had been done. And then Adama Traore happened.
Yeah, it didn't exactly do you any favors there. But I guess just be glad you didn't have to file it on the whistle like everybody else, because everybody else is frantically doing it. And at least you have a couple of hours to get it straight. Yeah,
it's really good, and it also helps. Well, I don't have to get swept into VAR debates. So obviously there were two, I wouldn't say contentious decisions, but there was a VAR check for potential handball on the first Wolves goal from Neto, and there was obviously VAR. There was no penalty given for the second goal until VAR intervened, and then there was a small VAR check for the third goal. So the initial conversation straight after the game was about VAR and Ralph's opinions on VAR. Ralph has been a pro VAR fan the entire time he's been in the Premier League. He believes that VAR is being used better in the Premier League than it is in Germany in his time there. But for the first time, he sort of had a little I didn't like that, which I found was interesting. But obviously, I think the thing about VAR conversations is if you let it happen for too long, you can be talking about for 15 minutes instead of what happened on the pitch. And I think the really interesting thing about Southampton on Saturday was James Ward-Prowse and the fact that he got booked on the half-hour mark and how that completely changed the game plan.
Okay, yeah. I guess can we start with the goals just real quick and briefly touch on them and we'll move forward, because I have as I was literally cruising as the game was going on. I was driving down to LA and I was watching the sunrise basically over the ocean. Nothing could be worse. And then at halftime, you crest this hill going into LA and you kind of drop into the valley. The traffic swarms around you. My sciatica decided that was the time to go, and we fell apart all at the same time. It was not a real fun. It did not come together the way I would have hoped. And so the first half goals, to find out, or to hear that they came from Jan Bednarak, just free at the back post there. I was surprised, and set pieces have been a way that we have attacked recently, but he was just wide open. And I think there was a couple of weeks ago where he also found himself open at the back post and just couldn't quite turn it in. But this time, a smooth finish, a great delivery once again, but the ball just comes to him and he's able to side foot it into the far post. And I don't know, that's just a classy finish from him, and not something I would necessarily predict from a center back, I don't think.
Yeah, it's something. So obviously James Ward-Prowse likes to aim for near post on his corner kicks and for the majority of his free kicks, but he's getting these really good in swingers where he whips it in with such pace and with such spin that they eventually, a number of times they are managing to curl nicely at the far post to where a defender is waiting and defend. Sometimes it's Jack Stevens, as evidence against Aston Villa, or it's Ryan Bertrand as evidence in the game against Norwich, and this time was Jan Bednarak. So there is beginning to get real variance in their play. When Ralf Hassel was at Ingolstadt, 60% of their goals in their debut Bundesliga season came from set pieces, and they had Pascal Gross whipping in free kicks. So it's very clear it's something they really want to maximise on. So Dave Watson, the former goalkeeping coach for Southampton, who's now been promoted to first team assistant, I believe he was the gentleman that Jose Mourinho referred to as an idiot after the victory of the Spurs. So Dave Watson's job is to lead the set pieces. So it's really interesting seeing how, 6 months in, how this is all nicely coming to the boil.
Southampton have been very good from set pieces this season, and it's nice to see the variance in the near post, far post delivery over time. And I think so many of us are getting kind of excited now, because for a long time we didn't seem to score from set pieces, and it seemed to be almost a waste, or we have somebody go for goal, and now we're actually causing teams trouble. And unfortunately, I don't think we can defend them either sometimes, but we can work on that as we go. But from that goal, we go up early, and then the second goal happens. And actually, let's talk about James Ward-Prowse getting booked, because I think that does change things. He has this season turned not in a little bit of a mean streak maybe, but maybe more streetwise and grown up a little bit. And I think playing in the middle of the park, he is being asked to do things, and the dark arts of the game are coming out. And in your opinion, what changed after that booking for him? Because did we have to change kind of just ideas because we were going to have to offer him some protection from that point, or what was the change from your perspective? So
obviously I do the sort of live tweets and updates as I'm watching in the stadium, and I did mention he got booked in 20th minute, and I said this will be key because quite a lot of what Southampton do revolves around the ability of both central midfielders Højbjerg and Ward-Prowse to get away with bringing down play. Mm-hmm. So the Southampton team, they play quite narrow when possible, and then they explode in the wings. So very often you're getting Redmond and/or Bertrand overlapping or underlapping, but they always both want to cut inside and eventually get the crosses in. And the idea to counteract that is they sort of move like a crab to box people out and get loads of throw-ins. And if that fails, when in doubt, Højbjerg or Ward-Prowse will foul or make a tackle. And the idea is they want to continuously do that, but these tactical fouls, but they also don't want to get pinged for a yellow card. So in the build-up for the third goal, the really interesting thing, I asked how do you think the tactics turned? He said, in the number 6 position, we should have put more pressure, but unfortunately we didn't do it early enough, and therefore Traoré barreled through. It's quite cute saying we didn't put enough pressure on Traoré, a man who can outrun and pretty much beat up everyone in Premier League football. But you can see the principle. Basically, there was a little bit when Traoré was bursting through the middle where Ward-Prowse had a nibble and then realised he couldn't quite give it the proper nastiness because he thought it's probably worth another yellow card. Which is one of those things where you're kind of like, should Hassel have made a substitution when it got to 2-1, brought on Romeo, or should he have tried bringing on the Stuart Armstrong in the middle and then brought on Moose on the right-hand side? It's, hindsight's 2020. There's no guarantee as to what you could have done there. But it does reveal sort of Southampton's plan is quite good, but there are 2 or 3 little flaws that you can exploit if you just...
Yeah. And I guess one of the things I wanted to bring up, and we'll get to Shane Long's goal in just a second, is Southampton had several chances to be more than just 2 goals up at halftime. And I definitely felt like the tone of the game, like Southampton felt they were cruising. Wolves didn't look good. But I think those missed chances really do come back to haunt us. And if you look at the XG of the game, Wolves had much the better chances, but I think that some of that comes from the penalty spot and some of that comes from them just creating some bigger chances down the line. Their goals, they really should have scored, and they did, and I think that punished us very much. But moving forward to Shane Long's goal, I think the most talk about unlikely goal scorers. I think we have I had pointed out and other people had as well, that Danny Ings had scored over 50% of our goals as of a couple of weeks ago. You commented to me privately on that, and we were talking about it a little bit. But to get 2 goals from Shane Long, who doesn't score, and from Jan Bednarik, who I think had only scored on his Premier League debut. That's good for Southampton that we're starting to spread it around, but some of the other chances that we missed, I think this came back to haunt us a little bit. But let's talk about Shane Long's goal real quick. Once again, I thought it was good work from Armstrong and the entire team to kind of get the ball forward and win the ball back and keep it from going out of bounds. I thought all of that effort and everything is exactly what I want to see. Cedric, for all the criticism we can pinpoint on him for several things over the past couple of over the season, even though he's been decent the past couple of weeks. That cross was just I don't even think he looked. I think he just put it in the area, and it was beautiful.
He's really good at attacking when he's in a confident mood. I've said several things about Cedric that I probably should not have. There's a good footballer in there, and when he's switched on and he wants to play football, he's very good in the attacking segment. I still question his contribution on the defensive end, but he has sort of played himself back into form. He probably is, the best right back on Southampton's books right now. And if he wishes to stay, which there is a question mark there, he might renew his contract. Contract discussions will be had once Southampton reach 36 points. If he chooses to, I think there is an option for him to stay there as well.
Ooh, I will be honest. I'll be honest. I thought for a long time that he was gone for sure, and I think I was okay with that as long as we brought somebody in. But maybe this is a good chance to just step away from the match real quick and go back to something Ralph Hasenhüttl said in the press conference. And it seems to me this week that the mood around transfers changed a little bit. And what you said there about Cedric potentially staying, maybe that plays into it a little bit, but it seemed like up until this point, like we were definitely going to add some players or very likely try to add players in the wide areas, in the wide defensive areas, I should say. And it seemed this week that it said, well, if we find the right player, if we do this, it seemed to be, I'm not as optimistic that we're signing anybody now. Did you get the same from Ralph, or has that been building the last couple of weeks and maybe I've just missed it because I only watch, via Twitter or whatever?
No, I got the same sensation. It's that sort of weird thing that in the space of 10 days, Jake Vokins has gone from being not ready for Premier League football to being ready, and or we're going to watch his development in the FA Cup game, which, I'd love to remove all cynicism from my heart and say Jake Vokins clearly has done something in training recently, and Rouse has gone, I don't need another left back. But I think what's more likely is it's the 20th of July, the transfer window closes in 11 days, and it's not looking likely that the left back target is going to come in. I think so, throughout before the January window, I believe Southampton were going to bring in 2 players, and I also warned everyone not to get your hopes up too much. I still think there's a space to get in 2 players. I think what the bigger issue now is this sort of large conversation about potentially departing players. So there's been discussion about Shea Adams leaving. There's been discussion about Oyo Romeo leaving. There's been some question marks about Yannick Vestergaard. and some also recent speculation linking Maya Yoshida to a move to Turkey. As far as I know, Ralph Hasenhüttl doesn't want to lose any players this January. He very much thinks his squad is quite thin, I'd say small, and he doesn't want any players to go out yet. However, I do believe there will be a large trimming of the squad in the summer. But this is what happens in the January transfer window. Everyone gets really, really excited that something's going to come in, but then you remember it's 31 days to get in a lot of moving parts. And you've got to bear in mind, if you're buying someone from a club, the club doesn't want to do anything until they get a replacement. So I don't quite think anything big is going to happen in the next 11 days. Perhaps one new player.
Okay. I mean, from your feeling, a loan or a permanent deal, or do you have any inkling?
My gut tells me there is enough space for one permanent deal. Whether or not that is the experienced, ready-made player to jump right into the first team that Ralph has said before January, I don't know. It might be another player for the youth. We shall see.
All right, and he did mention that just because we can doesn't mean we will, and it's got to be the right player, and you got to kind of trust them. Although it's difficult to trust them because the transfer record hasn't been fantastic in recent seasons, but I like to give the team the benefit of the doubt when I can. Sometimes it gets me into trouble and disappoints me, but I think that's I think you can relate to that given United's performance recently. Sorry. So I mean, going into halftime, I don't know. I don't like to get overconfident, but I felt like things were going really, really well for us, and I was not necessarily concerned about some of the things that were going to happen. But I guess walk me through Wolves' first goal, and I guess actually walk me through what changed for Wolves at halftime, because you mentioned the lack of a plan B, really a problem here. Wolves come out at halftime, they change up the formation a little bit. And I think it was Traore that gave us a ton of issues up top.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting thing about how Traore's revival and rebirth and genesis from a somewhat shaky, rapid football player into this sort of game-breaking glitch. So Wolves turned up to the centre, he's playing a 3-4-3. Traore started up from the left, not his favourite position. Well, I think the plan was to have Traore run at Cedric Suarez. That didn't quite work because Stuart Armstrong, again, he's really, really diligent and sort of helped double up and help protect Cedric quite well. Then on the 20th minute, Traore moved over to the right-hand side, and then he swapped with Pedro Neto. This is when Wolves really looked to be the more dangerous side. So Pedro Neto's delivery from these wide positions, they got into some really good crosses for Jimenez, and you were sort of like, Southampton are a goal up, but there is still a chance for Wolves to get a goal. That didn't quite happen. And then at the start of the second half, Traore went up front alongside Raul Jimenez, and Neto dropped in the hole to play as a number 10. So Wolves played a 3-4-2-1. A 3-4-1-2. And it was the first time for a sustained period of time in my recent memory that Southampton had to play against two strikers. So this back four is getting a lot better now. They've got Jack Stevens. I think the back forward, as when you see it with Bertrand, Stevens, Benerac, and Cedric Suarez is the best back four they've got. So I think Benerac being injured or being unlikely to travel to Crystal Palace is a huge problem for Southampton going forward. But I think that's the best back four. But I also do not think they've played against two for 45 minutes. And Leicester tried it a little bit when they brought on Kelechi and Nacho with Jamie Vardy in the latter minutes of 2 weeks ago. And even then, that nearly worked. But it's one of those things where when you have to deal with two strikers, you're not sure whether to come or go or what to do. And one of those forwards is Adama Traore, one of the quickest players in the league, someone who absolutely loves to dribble, and also someone who can just barrel through players. It can be really hard because you want to double up on Traore. That was the game plan when he was in those wide positions where you just have two players just slam up on him. When you can't do that when he's playing up front, because you do that and you just lose so much space for Raul Jimenez, who is sort of, if there are any Tottenham Hotspur fans listening to this podcast for some reason, I think go off and buy Raul Jimenez. He's as close to Harry Kane as you're going to get.
I think one of the things that Southampton has struggled in recent seasons is the center backs have been, I want to say, weak in terms of their physicality, and they're not really been up for a challenge. And if you get in there and bully them, they seem to really struggle with that. And especially because now with two guys up top, like you said, you can't have one challenge for the ball and one drop off because you each have a man. And I think you see for that third goal, just each center back gets beat, essentially twice. I think Bednarik loses out to Traore on that early touch. Jimenez beats Stevens to the ball, and then Bednarik dives in on Traore and doesn't get the ball, and then we're just a disaster. From that point on, Traore is running, and we're all going to be a mess. And I'm not sure who to blame for that third goal in terms of the mistakes there. We have the VAR check, of course, as well for a handball potentially, but then nobody picks up Jimenez. They just allow Jimenez to kind of hang out around the penalty spot again. And, it's disappointing because I think we've seen that happen to Southampton earlier in the season and last season. And that's one of those things that we don't want to see. And maybe I thought that, or maybe we all thought that we were better than that, or just because we haven't seen that happen. And then here it comes, and it just looks like kind of the same mistakes, the same type of kind of meltdown that we've seen. And once again, at home, it's not a great feeling.
Yeah, it was a hard dose of reality. It's not a disaster, and I don't think Ralph is treating the defeat as a disaster, and he very much said, we've got a chance to fix this immediately against Crystal Palace on Tuesday, which they do. And I think Southampton now properly can breathe a bit easier, and we're not really going to have to talk about relegation much longer. I've told my landlord that I would like to, double up my lease and keep living in the flat further than June and whatnot. And I think quite a few people in and around Southampton that are also having that sort of, okay, so they're going to be a Premier League side next season. What's going to go on? And I think that's going to happen. There were a bit of tongue-in-cheek conversations from some Southampton fans who were saying, if you got another win, they'll be tied on points with Spurs, and the Europa League chase was on. But I think this is good. I think what's going to happen next for Southampton is they're going to be in and around 10th to 14th come the end of the season. And I think they're going to use that summer, hopefully, to really turn this squad into something Ralph Hassel wants. Yeah. And then they can do what they want to do next season, whether or not that is make a charge for Europe or just continue to bring in the youth and do what not. I think a lot of it is going to be contingent on Ralph, contingent on the incoming director of football, Matt Crocker, and contingent on whoever comes in as another director of football as well.
Yeah, well, and I think if you look at the table is fairly compressed in the middle. There's not a lot separating relegation from fifth or sixth in the table right now. And so the fact that yes, one win could have taken us level with Wolves going into the weekend, but a couple of results the other way and things look a lot worse for wear. So I think overall, if you would have said, finish around 12th for the season, I think that was my prediction going into the season. I think a lot of people would have been happy with that based on how things had gone in the past. We've gone through a tremendous run of form recently, and I would like that to continue. But I think always there has to be a little bit of a reality check at some point, and maybe we got it there. But Wolves are a tough side, and so to see them kind of make those changes and come back and play that way and get the comeback goal or the comeback win. I have to give them a little bit of credit, but I think we could have done a little bit better in some instances there. And we don't have to talk about VAR, or do we have to talk about VAR? It's up to you.
We don't have to talk about. I think what you said is right. Wolves are Europa League competing side for a reason. They will most likely make a deep run into the Europa League side. Espirito Santo is I think he's one of the best managers in the Premier League. As a Manchester United fan, I absolutely dread playing Wolves because Wolves know exactly how to beat Manchester United, and they know how to beat most teams. They're probably going to give Liverpool a really, really tough time because they can counter-attack, they can play possession football, and they've got so much variety when they're a bit hamstrung by quite a few injury problems right now, but they really are one of the true Premier League middleweights.
Yeah. I guess if we had to say there were there mistakes in those goals, do we allow them to? Because I would say that Cedric going forward, like as you said earlier, has been great and can be great when he's in the mood. Defensively, I thought that even for the penalty that he maybe bit a little bit, and I'm not sure why we allowed. I think it was it Neto who drew the penalty? I think
no, it's Johnny.
Okay, sorry. I'm not sure why we gave him that much space. I'm not sure why Cedric didn't stick closer to him, because once the ball was played to him, I think Stevens had to come across and make a challenge. And and I'm not sure who to blame there, but I'm leaning towards blaming Cedric, and I'm not sure if that's just me being harsh on him, or what it is. But did you get a replay on it? Did you have an opinion on it from what you saw?
Oh, a replay on it. It was unfortunate that Cedric was going to tackle someone at the same time that Jack Stevens was going to tackle someone. It was that sort of that you sort of were a bit hot-headed in that moment. But then at the same time, if Cedric didn't make that tackle, I don't think the Southampton faithful would have enjoyed that. Southampton are a club that are a fan base that very much talk about hard work, and Cedric is a player who has been booed because he didn't go in for tackles. So I'm not surprised that he didn't want to do that one. He didn't shirk that one. It was one of those things. Wolves are a really good side, and Southampton really couldn't get to grips with the fact that Neto and Traore were just swapping positions and alternating doing things and whatnot. Southampton's season will not live and die against results with Wolves. I think the interesting thing Rafa said in his press conference today on Monday was he said, we should be beating Wolves if you want to be a top 10 side. I think I'd be very surprised if any Southampton fan deeply, truly believes Southampton were going to be finishing in the top 10 at the start of the season. I think everyone was sort of thinking anywhere between 9th and 14th was par. And lo and behold, Southampton are in between 9th and 14th. So hopefully, a 1 point or 3 points against Crystal Palace, and so we'll go again.
Yeah, I think fair enough. And of course, there were going to be some VAR decisions that go against us at some point in the season, and maybe we just have to accept it. Although I will say, as somebody who's benefited from it, and I probably speak for more than just myself, and say that it's much harder when you're on this side of it to have it go against you. And the clear and obvious is coming out and everything else. And so we'll let everybody else discuss that, because I'm having a good day so far. I don't need to go down that road, but I do have some questions on some players for us. And you hinted earlier about Shane Long, and my question is Shane Long good enough to be starting in the best 11 that Southampton have?
I didn't expect you to ask me that question.
Well, you don't have to answer, because I can always cut it out.
No. Really, Shane Long is a very, 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 very important part of this Southampton side, and he's integral to how this Southampton side attacks. So I've just written this piece on him now. I've submitted it. Hopefully, fingers crossed, will be live on Tuesday for Athletic subscribers. But basically, he plays on the shoulder of the last man, but he also drops deep, especially around like the centre circle area. And he wins loads of flick-ons, and he heads the ball quite often, and he basically brings in Redmond, Ings, and other attackers to play ahead of him. So he sort of has this sort of in a nice way. He's sort of like a bootleg Olivier Giroud, where his hold-up play, his work in the near post areas, and what he does off crosses is really, really, really important for the faster players around him to work. Danny Ings' goal record when Shane Long is on the pitch is far better than when Shane Long is off the pitch. But he is a free agent in the summer, and you do get this sort of feeling of he's not a prolific goal scorer. And if you're a football team and you've got an 11 and one of your strikers is a non-goal scoring striker, you do eventually get into these positions where you're going, right, we might need to get in someone that can do everything Shane Long can do, but can also score goals. That person currently doesn't really exist on Southampton's books. I think maybe it was hopes that Shea Adams could be part way of that way, but Shea Adams probably not as good in the air as Shane Long. Shane Long's 5'11". Shea Adams is 5'10". So there's no real huge target man at Southampton, but Shane Long does a pretty good attempt at it. So that's an interesting problem. And it's one of those things of you can improve upon Shane Long, and a smart football club will probably be looking to improve upon him in the summer as he enters free agency. But if the option is still there and he wants to stay and he doesn't want to take, he doesn't mind not getting big minutes, or he doesn't mind not getting a large contract, there's no real damage into extending his contract for one more season.
No, and I think you will have people that are a little bit upset about that, because they want someone better. They don't think they look at the goal record, and I understand that he's not prolific and he has missed chances, in the past, but it's hard to sometimes to justify to people the player that stats don't stand up for, And I think sometimes that happens. But moving on to, I think, to a player that maybe stats definitely do stand up for is Danny Ings. A couple of weeks ago, he had scored 52% of our Premier League goals. He's now dropped just below the 50% mark due to other people actually scoring, which is nice. But 14 of our 29 Premier League goals have come from Danny Ings this season. Is that okay? Or are we too reliant on him to do that? Or, and what happens if heaven forbid something happens to him? What's the plan for Southampton in that case?
I wrote about this after the draw with Arsenal, basically why Southampton shooting so bad. With this idea of Southampton have 2 or 3 good plans. So in order, way Southampton score goals. Danny Ings scores a goal. Mm-hmm. Number 2, James Ward-Prowse does a set piece. Number 3, Moussa Djenepo. And Moussa Djenepo hasn't been doing much in a while now. So you basically only get 2 main ways of scoring right now. Obviously, this is Hasenhutl's thing is you when you press on the front foot and you play this 4-2-2-2 system, everyone can become a playmaker, and therefore it doesn't really become a situation where you need to rely on Danny Ings' goal scoring, which for the first 45 minutes against Wolves was true. Danny Ings didn't really have a good game, but it didn't matter because Benedict popped up from the set piece, and he had Shane Long get one from across, and I think they will slowly diversify from their play. That's not to say Danny Ings will tail off massively in the latter half of the season, but Hasenhüttl is a smart manager, and he understands that he, 1, needs to get the most out of Danny Ings, and 2, he needs to figure out a way of scoring without Danny Ings. I think the plan B for now is use the set pieces, mm-hmm. and then they'll move forward to see other versions. But again, this is the thing of when your plan A is get Danny Ings to score goals, that means you have to play Shane Long, and Shane Long isn't prolific, so you get that. Which
I guess goes back to kind of what you said earlier during the summer, is to look to improve on a player in the Shane Long mold, somebody that can hold the ball up and score.
Yes,
which is not, it might be difficult to do, but that's what the scouting department has to kind of find. If we are going to push forward, if we're just going to stay where we're at, then I think keep Shane Long around. I like watching him play. I know some people don't, but that's my personal opinion. I enjoy watching the guy play because he does the things that Saints fans want. We yell at Cedric for not putting in tackles. Shane Long puts in tackles, and does everything that you would want him to do except for score. So maybe if we just make him a right back, he'll be all right. And then maybe just let him defend set pieces as well. I do have one other thing is yesterday, a flurry of Romeu tweets about him leaving came out. Dan Sheldon, who writes for the Southern Daily Echo, says, as far as I'm aware, it's unlikely Oriol Romeu will be joining Celta Vigo this month. But I mean, where did that come from? Is that just one online report and that's just because we're in the transfer window, or in your opinion, was there a little bit of traction behind that?
I didn't realise anything about it until Sunday, and my phone starts buzzing with a very nice Southampton fan going, "Oh, Carl, what's going on like this?" The transfer window is especially hard. My forgiveness to anyone, forgive me to any Southampton fans listening to this right now. Southampton as a football club are really, really, really secretive during transfers, so they don't really talk about any players they're linked to, or any players that may be departing. So there have been 2 incidences now where Ralph Hasenhuttl has been asked about things regarding Kyle Walker-Peters at Tottenham Hotspur, and he's going, I don't like to talk about players. This has been a long-standing thing about Southampton. They don't really like talking about any player until they're on the club website, both coming in and going out, and also similar with incoming coaching staff and or backroom staff as well. They don't like talking about this whatsoever. So as a reporter, a lot of my work is trying to talk to agents and or texting people and using WhatsApp. So first things first, I got to find someone's phone number. Then I got to introduce myself to them. Then I've got to make sure they trust me enough and whatnot, which causes, as someone in my first season covering Southampton, it can be a little bit difficult. It's a fun challenge. So I am chasing this Romeu thing, and I'm trying to figure out what's going to go on there. My belief is the same. I don't believe any Southampton player will really be leaving in this window. I did have one sort of thing I've been told about that I'm going to start researching now in regards to one player. That's not to say one player leaving or one player coming in. I'm researching quite a bit, but it's a lot. It's a bit of a game of poker, and it involves a lot of like WhatsApp blue ticks and trying to figure stuff out right now. So the Japanese journalist contingent that comes to Southampton every single week with the sort of expressed desire to talk to Maya Yoshida. Yoshida has been linked to going to, I think, Trabzonspor in Turkey, and that question was raised. And why basically Yoshida didn't feature in the Matchday squad. And the journalist asked, is that because Maya's going to go to Turkey? And Ralph went, no, it's because I'm trying to rotate the amount of defenders I've got on the pitch, on the substitutes bench. And Maya has his time. I think now Bednarek is injured. I'm pretty sure Maya will probably come in on Tuesday to play against Crystal Palace. So we shall see.
All right. We have a couple of questions. We don't have to answer all of them because you have other things to do. Some of them I'm not sure you want to answer on air. Lord Prowse, who's at James Lord Prowse, says, what do I have to do to get a follow from Anchorman? So I'll let you deal with that. We talked a little bit about Plan B, and maybe we already addressed this, but Nico, I'm going to butcher this, but Caltabiano, I think, from Twitter says he enjoyed the article about the lack of a Plan B, but he wants to know, do we not have a Plan B because we don't have different players, or don't we have a different players because Ralph does not have a Plan B under his sleeve? I'm not sure if do you understand that enough to kind of have a go at it?
The Plan B is basically what Ralph wants this team to press. Press this, and if you press on the front foot, then you don't need a Plan B. He's right, like any manager that talks about philosophy. Hassel thinks of pressing. You've got Sarri, who wants to play Sarri ball, quick interchanges in the final third. You've got Pep Guardiola with how he wants to play football. Any manager that uses the word philosophy very much is a Plan A first and foremost. And if they lose, their response is, let's refine Plan A rather than getting a Plan B. So even if Ralph changes formation or changes personnel, the press is going to be really, really important. But I think this sort of, the interesting thing, I'm going to bring up Shane Long again, is Shane Long probably would be quite interesting as a Plan B option. So you play Danny Ings with another striker for argument's sake, let's say Shea Adams, and then that goes well or whatnot, and then in the 70th minute, then you bring on Shane Long to do sort of an aerial bombardment. That would be like a Plan B. The problem is Ralph has spent so long going around with this back three and then a back five and then this back four that he's taken so long to get to this sort of 4-2-2-2 system and got everyone to finally buy into playing the way he wants. And it's only really clicked after the international break. But I don't think he wants to make a Plan B right now. I think anything that isn't playing this 4-2-2-2 system would further complicate things. So what you're more likely to get is just Ralph going, same again, don't worry about Wolves. We need to run ball wins. We need to be able to do those tackles. And if we get a problem later on, we're going to keep doing it.
All right. What would be better? This comes from one of the patrons of the show, Justin Woodward. What would be better for the club going forward? To get 3 points against Palace, or to beat Spurs in the Cup? What would be better for Southampton's, I guess, long-term ambition for the season, or momentum, for momentum's sake, maybe?
I think a cup run would be nice. Southampton fans said they would quite like a cup run. They got the round before the quarterfinals in the League Cup before the sort of humbling against Manchester City, and then I don't know, the League Cup thing, aside from the glorious victory over Portsmouth, will not really add much to their season. I think Southampton right now are first and foremost about the Premier League. I think they'd much rather beat Palace and then lose to Spurs. I think whatever's going to happen, there will be a much rotated team against Tottenham Hotspur as well. I think there's probably a chance for a return for Angus Gunn, a run up for Vestergaard, and or another chance for maybe a start for Musa Djenepo, which I think would be quite interesting. Or maybe another youth player, Jake Bokins or Will Smallborn might get some minutes on Saturday as well. But I think the real interesting thing will be the Women's FA Cup game on the Sunday, which will also be at St Mary's as well, which I am hopefully going to be in attendance for.
All right. Yeah, I hope there's a crowd there for that. Just for women's football in general, would be nice to see people in there and show up. And I don't know who they're playing. I don't know who they drew in the last round.
It's Coventry City on Sunday.
All right. I know the Southampton Women's Football Club, the other Southampton Women's Football Club. They have a big game coming. They have Crystal Palace ladies coming. So that's going to be another tough test for them. So they were hoping for something like it's kind of the worst case scenario for them, because they have a tough team that's from a couple divisions above them that probably won't draw a big crowd. They won't. Crystal Palace fans probably won't make the the travel, so it's not going to bring in the gate receipts. Whereas they were playing Liverpool or Arsenal or somebody like that, they would definitely get some money out of that. And they didn't get somebody that's smaller than them they could likely beat. So it's going to be tough for them. But we'll see how that goes when it happens. Christian Candler from Instagram says to Carl, what's the most surprising thing you learned covering Southampton this year?
Oh man, I didn't expect Danny Ings to be that good. I really didn't understand how vitriolic the South Coast derby could be. So like Portsmouth was like, oh man, they really, really hate each other. Wow, that's like a huge game of football. That you only really get to sample because they play each other maybe once every 3 or 4 years. So that was something I found really, really interesting. The idea of the Southampton way being kind of fictitious was something really interesting. So obviously, to the uninitiated that perhaps only watch Southampton 2 or 3 times on TV a season, you get this idea that Southampton is sort of like a well-to-do, nice middle-class footballing existence, whereas what they are, they've got a fan base that, mostly working-class city, fan base that pride hard work above everything else. Mm-hmm. And that was something that took some time to learn as well. Another thing I found surprising was just basically like the city of Southampton it's really northern. Like really northern. It's like a northern city that's accidentally in the south, which I find quite cool. But yeah, I like Southampton. It's a fun place to live.
All right. Kind of building on the back of that, Kevin McGee, I have just like kind of lighthearted stuff now. You have a favorite place to eat and drink in Southampton? Kevin McGee, one of the patrons, he says that's how relaxed I am about the football at the moment.
There's a place called La Can Match that's on Bedford Place in Southampton. So it's founded by a former winner of MasterChef, and that's my favorite place to eat when I'm in Southampton. I'm going to go buy a cookbook because I eat in there all the time. I love it.
The cookbook is cheaper than ordering off the menu, I can guarantee you. Although sometimes the ingredients aren't. I've noticed having to buy some stuff sometimes for one dish. It's like, why did I spend this money? But anyway. And then last but not least, we have a question from St. Foo Fighter from Twitter, based nothing on actual football, but American football. He says, who's going to win the Super Bowl in your opinion, Chiefs or 49ers? He's going 49ers. Do you have, can you weigh in on this at all?
Defense wins championships. So it's going to be San Francisco, isn't it?
I'm from California. I don't like San Francisco, but
I'm not particularly keen on them either. But I want the Ravens to get there. So I want the Ravens to get there once the Ravens got knocked out. It was very much, all right, well, let's get Aaron Rodgers another ring, and then they fumbled. So I think it's going to be San Francisco, unfortunately. I don't know who we're watching yet. It's one of those weird things where I tend to watch Super Bowls. I didn't watch last year because I'm not watching Brady Super Bowls anymore because I'm not putting myself through that mental anguish. But providing I get Monday off, I will be watching Super Bowl this year as well.
I want to say the last couple of Super Bowls I've spent editing a podcast during it, which is the least dramatic thing you can do. I will probably fall asleep several times, but my mom's husband, Greg, he's a big 49er fan, so we'll go with them. I think that's fine. But yeah, Carl, it's been great. I always enjoy talking to you. I appreciate your time. Is there anything else that you would like to mention or say before we get off of this?
No, I just thank you to all Southampton fans for interacting with my tweets, reading my articles on The Athletic, and bringing article ideas to me as well. Like I said, I'm not going to be the master of everything in terms of Southampton Football Club. I'm not even the master of everything of Southampton Football Club this season. So please, if you think there is something interesting or needs highlighting that isn't currently being spoken about Southampton, please get in touch with me and let me know. I'm hearing what you're saying about ticket allocation and whatnot. So that is also something that I'm bearing in mind and trying to carry on forward. Anyone that's going to any home games in St. Mary's, please say hello to the Saints Brass Band because I absolutely adore them. So be nice to them anytime you see them. And other than that, keep reading, stay safe. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. That means don't do karaoke.
Yeah, and then always tuck in your shirt when you play football, right?
Absolutely.
How's Lee Cattermole FC doing? You guys getting all right?
It's a brand new season, and we've drawn 1 and lost 3, which is one of those really annoying things. Everyone's come back from Christmas break.
Early season fitness woes.
Yeah. No.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon.
Cool. Talk soon. Bye.
I'd like to welcome back to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, Mike Smale, the guy behind and on camera, actually in front of the camera, doing all the stuff for Matchday vlogs on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and at Match Vlogs on Twitter. You get it?
It's all in.
Yeah,
absolutely.
All right. Well, welcome to California again.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm enjoying the sunshine in January. It's not normally something that I can do, really. So
yeah.
Great to be
Even
here.
in the shade. It's not. I don't have a jacket on.
Right. I didn't quite make it that far.
It's okay.
But it's still very, very summery.
Yeah, this is not normal
Depths
for
of
you.
winter.
This is why it costs a lot to live here. Which I think we used to celebrate, and I'm not sure we should celebrate that anymore.
Right.
It's probably pretty bad. But anyway, I hope you're enjoying your time.
That's great.
Thanks for coming to lunch and
Fantastic.
hanging out. But yeah, so obviously we're talking today. It is a bit noisy. We have the street here, but it's LA, and that's what you get. So we'll just take it all in. It's part of the ambiance. Hopefully we don't have another fire truck.
We've had a few.
Yeah. And hopefully if it comes across, it'll at least be on the opposite side of the road,
Right.
so you get to see some excitement.
And they'll see it.
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well,
yeah. So yeah, I mean, have you enjoyed your time in LA so far? I mean, you've been here a while.
It's been great. Obviously, I'm not just here for this interview.
Sure.
On this, although absolutely would have flown out just for this interview, of course. But yeah, I'm just about in the time zone now, so I'm kind of waking up later in the morning. And of course, when I'm finally in the zone, then I'll be flying back home and try and switch it back the other way, get the jet lag. But no, it's great to be here.
Yeah, well, welcome, like I said. And this is not necessarily my neighborhood, but it's close enough. So I'm glad we can get together and do this. But let's talk a little bit. I think you've been on the show before. I know you've been on the show before, but we talk a little bit about just the channel, and we've been talking for a couple hours now, just sitting here hanging out. But talk about the channel has grown since the last time you've been on.
It has. I think when we last spoke, it had about 50 subscribers on YouTube, and now we just passed 600. So I'd actually like to thank you for all the traffic that you brought my way and onto the channel. So thank you for that.
Well, I hope I've helped a little bit at least. But it's always good. Like, we have Saints fans kind of spread throughout the state and throughout the United States, but often the opportunity to sit down and talk one-to-one doesn't happen. And so I found out you're going to be here. It was like we got to set it up and we got to do it. So I'm glad we could do it. And it's nice to meet somebody else, not just that's a Saints fan, but also that's somebody that's putting out content and not putting out content, but just, it's got a hobby that's similar to mine and working on that stuff. So it's nice to sit down and talk about that and
likewise
and do that. So I guess from where we were the first time to now in terms of you, because you've been making vlogs aside from Saints vlog stuff for a long time.
Sure.
But it has just the football side of it. Have you learned anything new that you've maybe taken to your other channels, or has shooting the games and stuff like that kind of gotten easier for you since you started doing it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think in terms of have I taken anything from the football vlogs into my other vlogs, I would say yes. Because there's lots of things that happen that are unexpected in football that you tend to be able to plan ahead for and other things. But and also I've changed a lot the way I do these episodes now, because another noise from the other side.
There it is.
I changed the way I do them because I know that it's very apparent that when you're there to support the team, you don't want anything to get in the way of you supporting the team. You get involved in the atmosphere of the game. And so certainly with our new setup at the stadium where we're in our seats, I can set up a camera and just leave it running. There's a massive impact on, doesn't have any impact on how I'm then supporting the team.
Yeah, so you just get to watch.
Exactly. I can spend a bit of time pre-game, getting a bit of the build-up, getting a cinematic B-roll for doing stuff like that, and then just really on focus on enjoying and supporting the team during the game.
Yeah. That's a big difference, because I think sometimes even some of the criticism that comes to vlogs is that you're just live in the moment, just be there. And I know we talked about that with at home with my wife. It's like this obsession with taking pictures of everything and video recording everything, or doing it where it's like you just be there and do it. So if you can get kind of the best of both, if you can set the camera up and forget about it, then you do have a lot to go through, and sometimes you have an hour and a half of nothing.
Exactly.
But at the same time, you still have, you still enjoyed the moment for what it was. And if you are able to make something out of it in the end, then I guess you have that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's about catching that moment that is the most important side of it, really, because, for fans that don't get to go to the games or that may live overseas or 5,000 miles away here in California, it's kind of nice to see that emotion, whether it be good, whether it be bad, but just actually see it for what it is.
Yeah. I think for me, watching them, you can kind of see the wave almost of it go around the stadium, and that's always, or you can see, you watch you kind of, your head drop or whatever if we make a mistake and concede a goal, and you can see the away fans off in the corner kind of going nuts, or the opposite and it's always great just to see the fans near the away fans that just don't even celebrate, just turn to the away fans just to give it to them. And I was like, that I enjoy that kind of stuff because it's just, that's the stuff that as a fan here you don't get to have a part of that.
No,
occasionally I have a text message with a Chelsea friend or something like that that even that is not, it's not the same.
No, it's not. And of course, some great moments in terms of the fan-to-fan banter that happens, especially in the Itchen North corner, and of course on the other side of the Northern. It's a lot goes on that corner of the ground, so it's nice to capture that. And likewise when it goes badly and they give out free scarves, and then the majority then end up on pitch side because they're all throwing them towards the pitch after their displeasure of seeing them lose to whoever it was at the time. So
well, that was a terrible performance all the way around.
Yes.
And at a very bad time. We've come some way from that. Recently, I think the run since week 13, since the last international break, really has been it's been amazing, and it's not something that I would have thought was going to happen given how things were going early on in the season. It kind of looked like, I think there were a lot of us who thought we were kind of nailed on for relegation at that point. And, we were all searching for answers, and I think I was finally starting to come around to the point of like, it's the players are not good enough, and we've had this many managers who, maybe some of them weren't good enough either, but if Ralph can't do it with them, then they all need to go. And I guess I was wrong for a lot of it, or maybe we still do need players, and maybe the January transfer window is not the place to get them, but we can definitely improve. But it's been such a good run of form, and I think improvement all over the pitch. And I don't know. I mean, for you, when we were going through that kind of early run of games where we were looking pretty terrible, like, what was it like to shoot through all of that stuff? And did it get old, I guess, that kind of feeling of going to St. Mary's and not really expecting much?
Right. It was hard because whenever you're in a rut, you just can't see where the next points are going to come from. And the performances that we had against clubs that weren't anything special, I think probably hurt us the most. It certainly hurt me as a fan the most, is to see opposition sides come to St. Mary's being nothing special and going home with 3 points, because they were just there for the taking. I'm talking about the Bournemouth game where we were awful. We were just there was no connection from our side. The connection play just wasn't there. It was an absolute mess. It was the same against West Ham, same against Everton, and those were games where we should have at least got a point from. Even if we played ugly, just to take something from the game, because there was nothing special out in front of us. And even for that Watford game, for the first 70 minutes, it was pretty awful. And then the last 20 minutes to turn it around to get 2-1. I mean, maybe that was a transformation point in the season. But yeah, I mean, that's why I had that full-time reaction that I did, because it was just so, up to that point, we'd accumulated 3 points at St. Mary's since our last win. And it was just like, I mean, that's how desperate it was. It was appalling.
And it's got to wear on you. I mean, you're driving in from a fairly lengthy distance away every match day, and to show up and just see us lose match after match, and know what it means to a team that's going to, as you just fall further and further down the table. Apparently it's closing time. It is not closing time. I'm leaving that in. I don't care. But just to see, I just kept looking at the table, going like we're down another place. We're down another place. We're now all of a sudden we're more than just a win away from getting out of the relegation zone, and that starts to get really worrying. And I think I Twitter will make you think things are worse than they are when they are, and that's fine. But I started to get really worried there for a while, and I started trying to find out if ESPN was going to carry the championship the next year, and it's like it's too early to worry about it, because now all of a sudden, we're talking after the Wolves match today, right now, but had we won, we would have been level on points with Wolves, and
and Spurs.
Yeah, and all of a sudden it can change that fast, and it can go back the other way just as fast, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But the turnaround has been, nothing short of amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
When you're down there in those lower positions, back-to-back wins mean so much. And, they can really carry you up the table. And for us to get, was it 4 wins out of 5 games? That was nothing short of incredible.
Yeah.
To see that kind of transformation. There are other clubs in the league that have also have a similar kind of success run with, Nigel Pearson at Watford. There's another side that have really turned it around in recent weeks and look very, very dangerous. So, but yeah, to think that these are the same players that we watched against Everton, that we watched against West Ham, that we watched against Bournemouth, it's something changed, something switched. It was a formation changed, and suddenly the players understood what they were doing. But
well, coming out of of course, the 9-0 is always going to be there, and that it serves as a jumping off point for a lot of people, and it maybe just a moment of clarity for the entire team to just go we're not good enough. And we have to be better moving forward. And it doesn't necessarily mean, the next 2 games after that were pretty poor as well. But since the coming out of the last international break, and it coincided with the move to this formation, this pretty consistent formation, the team's been great, and we've had times where Crystal Palace who kind of gifted us a goal, the bad back pass, and we've had brilliant strikes and set piece goals, and people have chipped in, and Ings has been incredible, and just all of that together kind of makes you go maybe we have enough to get this done.
Right.
And I don't know, I don't want to get to the point where I'm maybe assuming or reaching too far, but at the same time, if we're not going to reach, then what's the point? We should be ambitious, and we should be going for those. And if we wind up finishing 12th after being where we were at the beginning, and even still looking at the table and saying we were only a couple of mistakes away from being challenging for a European position, which I don't think any of us really felt like we probably shouldn't, given the start we had. But
mid-table as well.
Yeah,
I think lots of people were thinking this season.
Yeah. I think a lot of people were, and just right now it's I don't know. It feels like we've been on a pretty crazy roller coaster at a time when we're sitting with Disneyland just on the other side of the camera.
Right. Yeah, indeed. When you think back to the 29th of November, we had 9 points. And then over the Christmas period, we had such a great run. It was 10 points over that Christmas period, and then it's strong thereafter. And here we are. What's the date today? Is it 17th, 18th?
It's the 18th.
It's the 18th, and we're here with 28 points. So, and I think Freddie put up on one of his blog posts that it was going to be 3 wins from safety, and we really are at that stage now where that should be very achievable with the kind of fixtures we've got coming up, and and who knows? Had we won today, everyone will be talking about Europe.
Yeah,
simple as. So.
Yeah, and I don't know if that'd be good or bad. Yeah,
it's true.
It's I do. When you think back to what some of those nights meant for a lot of the fans that had been, season ticket holders and things through the relegations and through coming back up, and what it meant for those people to be able to go away to Europe and to celebrate that, even though we didn't do as well as we would have wanted. That counts for a lot,
Yeah.
And it hasn't been nearly as bad the last couple of years. It hasn't been as bad as it was, but at the same time, for the fans that have sat through the St. Mary's kind of woes and things like that, to get back to that, and just to have them be able to grasp that, and again, I think would mean a lot to a lot of people. And that's something that I might not understand fully, because honestly, midweek games are hard for me to watch, so it's kind of a pain. But at the same time, I want the team to be there, and partially because I want my students to be able to watch us on TV in the middle of the week in my room, but at the same, I want the fans to be able to go and have those nights in Europe, and for St. Mary's to host those things, and I think that would mean a lot.
Yeah, I think one of the special results that we had when we were in Europe was that Inter Milan game at home. and that was a very special atmosphere at St Mary's. That something that was quite something really.
Yeah.
And of course the away fixture. I didn't get to go to San Siro, but I can imagine for a lot of fans that have been lifelong supporters of the club, those are the kind of moments they want to see and be involved with. So.
Yeah. I guess for you this season, what stood out to you the most has been kind of the biggest difference from your perspective that when you talk about the turnaround that has happened. Has it been the formation? Has it been just the attitude of the players or the atmosphere around St. Mary's? Or what's kind of stood out to you in terms of since that change has happened?
I think in terms of the change, you would say, Danny Ings is obviously a massive part of what we've achieved this season already, but he's been strong throughout the season.
Yeah.
But I think it's players like, Jack Stevens suddenly becoming, a formidable force in defence. Okay, he's still very young, still got his faults, but he's really stood up. And we found our back four, so to speak, and to get that clean sheet that we did at Chelsea, I thought was a huge achievement. And that almost felt as good as the win itself.
Yeah.
Is to get that clean sheet, and again recently against Spurs as well.
Yeah.
So for me, the defence has had a big turnaround. I still think it's a very shallow squad in regards to the quality that we have. Had we had any kind of injuries whatsoever, I think it would be a very different picture to what we're seeing right now. But Ralph seems to have his favoured 11, which he didn't have at the beginning of the season. Every time we saw the team sheet, it was like, what's going to come up now? There's always something in there that was new, different, whether it be Vestergaard in the back line, it was like, oh, okay, or Yoshida suddenly gets a starting spot again. It was very much a trial and error.
Yeah.
But it now appears to be, this is a formula that works, so this is what we want to go with.
Yeah, a formula and a formation, and Højbjerg's not showing up at left back anymore, and things like that. I think those things. It's when you look at what the manager was trying to do, he was desperately trying to find something that worked, and I think the frustrating part for us is if you would have asked a lot of fans like, what's the lineup? It probably doesn't include Jack Stevens,
right?
But a lot of the players that are there would have kind of looked the way it is right now. I think. Yeah. And it was a little bit frustrating that it took so long to find out. But you mentioned how often the changes were. I stopped trying to predict the lineup. I stopped doing the predicted 11 because it's time consuming. And then you do it, and then you're off. You're not even close. Like, you just have. It was extremely frustrating, and I just said I'm not doing it until. And now there's almost no point because it's like we just slapped the same 11 people out there and put in this formation. So it's taken away an aspect of the newsletter, but it's allowed me to focus elsewhere. So it's okay, and it's working, which is I think is all that really matters to me. And
also another note on like the players that have changed and really turned up. I still think, I love watching the guy to bits, but Pierre-Emile Højbjerg hasn't really shown any great performances this season, where last season he was really an anchor for the squad, someone that would really grab the game by the scruff of the neck and get going with it. But he's a player that hasn't really quite come to the forefront just yet. So.
Yeah, you feel like he can, if he puts in some of the performances he put in last season and you put that into this squad, where the different, maybe it's just the role that he's got to play this year is a little bit different, or maybe I'm not sure. But at the same time, James Ward-Prowse is playing miles better than he was last season, and he seems to have found a position that I didn't think he was strong enough to play. But I think they were saying he's played every minute of every competition this season. Has not. I can't play a whole Sunday League game. Never mind do this week in, week out, and to watch him and to look at the miles he's covering and the tackles he's putting in and everything else. Like he's kind of putting it all together, and everybody's talking about Danny Ings for England, and maybe Ward-Prowse is going to sneak his way in there too. But I don't know if that's deserved or what, but he's definitely shown, I think, a lot of us that doubted him at all, that he's kind of got something about him that maybe he didn't always have, or maybe he's developed it, or maybe he just didn't show it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Obviously, the loss to Wolves is a little bit shocking, especially the way it kind of came about. I don't think either one of us got to watch the whole match because we were kind of busy doing stuff, but it's you would have thought being 2-0 up at halftime and looked like we were cruising. I think had we put away one or two more chances, that game is out of reach and we're done. But Wolves are no joke, and they gave us some problems. It looked like they Traore's always going to give us a couple of issues just with the pace, and he doesn't ever look smooth on the ball. He looks very clumsy and labored, but he gets it done, and he definitely put himself about, and Jimenez finishes well, and that is what Wolves do. And so frustrating to lose, to drop those points, but at the same time, like, you know, maybe another wake up call that you just can't take your foot off the gas, and you have to keep playing. You have to play 90 minutes against these teams, and we just didn't quite do that, I don't think, this time.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, Wolves are a good side, and when they play well together, they're a very organised operation. But firstly, I'd like to say, you know, it was the first time I've covered or watched a Southampton game from 5,000 miles away, and to certainly get up at that kind of hour. Well, I was up anyway because of the jet lag, but it was very strange to watch a 3 o'clock kickoff at 7 a.m. in the morning, and then and I saw up to the 70th minute. I managed to get a stream, and of course I saw us concede the 2 goals. I don't think. I mean, the first goal was pretty unavoidable. The penalty that was overruled by VAR, I still think that was a question mark, really, because to me it wasn't enough for it to overturn the referee's decision.
Right.
Because for me the ball had gone and the 2 players were kind of came across and blocked it away. I mean, you look at that 2 ways, but the referee hasn't given it, and he didn't go to the pitch side screen to review it himself. So I think that was perhaps, I mean, it was his first Premier League game in charge. Maybe there's a little bit of a nerves thing going on there, but I don't think that was really something that should be overturned. And then the third goal, I understand from a few people saying that there was a handball in the run-up to it. So, you know, these are kind of turns of luck that unfortunately do happen in football, and had we put away some of those other chances in the first half, I mean, Shane Long hit the post with a header. You had Nathan Redmond hit the crossbar. You know, these are all tight margins, really, and it could have been so different. You know.
Yeah, and if you take a few of those chances, and then even if the VAR decision goes against us like it did, and everything else, then, you know, you can only control what you can control, right? You take your chances and you don't worry about the rest. But and we've been so lucky with VAR for the most part this season. You know, VAR's one of our own.
Yeah.
And
buy him in the summer.
Yeah, and it's, you know, you wonder about the referee and it being his first time. Like, if there's a little bit of, well, if I argue with him here, am I going back to the championship next week? You know, or do I have to be the 4th official again, or whatever it is? Like, you know, and I think I agree that if he gives the penalty straight away, I think maybe we complain a little bit, but you say that's football and that's how it goes. Right. But it's the fact that it was overturned for that, and it didn't look clear and obvious. Watching it kind of out of the corner of my eye as I was driving, which I won't really. I've just admitted on the record, but I probably shouldn't have. But, like, you know, it kind of looked like a penalty. But the referee had a clear view of it, and he said no, and so you want it to just be to go. And I think you look at the amount of stoppage time we had in the second half, it was 6 minutes or something like that. Like that's all down to VAR decisions that took forever to be. You know, and it was fine for me, but it's the people in the stadium that while you're waiting for that, like
confusion and not knowing that. I mean, with VAR, I mean, we've been lucky with VAR, but in the same respect, we've had a lot of things that have been quite cruel on us on VAR. I mean, today would be one, but also that red card against Bertrand in that Leicester game. I mean, that changed it massively, because we just conceded a goal and then we'd had our left back sent off. Yeah. So it was like, right, you know, what now? So it's a very, very tough. There's a lot of talk about VAR going on in the UK, as I'm sure you pick up over here. And what really frustrates me is the fact that a lot of the pundits are talking about things that aren't subjective. That, you know, the fact that he's only off by a millimetre. Yeah. Well, we had a goal line decision in the Watford Spurs game earlier today that was, okay, well, it was literally a millimetre before going over the line. Well, you can't have it both ways. Right. You can't have a goal line technology which is down to a millimetre and then an offside decision down to a millimetre. You know, you've got to have it for both, otherwise it doesn't work.
So you were up at 4:30 a.m.
I'm not sleeping well. I'll be honest, you know. I saw the second half.
Yeah, that's 4:30 a.m. is what time that game kicked off. I was getting ready. I was not watching the game. But it's and I guess to ask you, I mean, what's it been like? Or step away from the match. What was it like to have a game on like that and then like be on that schedule? Because you you're so used to kind of your match day routine and things of going down to the stadium, or even if it's one of the later games in or if you're in another European country because you're working, like it's generally a little bit later, not earlier. And so, what was it like to kind of have that?
It's very strange, and I think today, because I'm here on work purposes, to try and not get overly distracted by the football itself on something like that. But it was very strange because I was watching the game from 7 a.m. and then I had a presentation to do, and I literally had it on my iPad on top of my laptop and notebook as I walked into the boardroom, and there was kind of full with the CEO of the company and other people, and literally just shut the iPad as I walked in right when it was at 2-2.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like I then had the agony of doing what I needed to do with the back of my mind, thinking, okay, what's going to happen in the last 20 minutes? We just brought Giannepo on and Shea Adams. Are we going to get a winner, or are we going to concede a third? It was that was pretty tough.
Yeah, it's not always the best.
No,
but
you have my sympathies. This is hard to do.
Luckily, I don't always have to go to work on Saturdays, but it's the midweek games that are I can catch 20 minutes here, 20 minutes there, and then then the kids are definitely looking at their phones and laughing at me as I'm trying to be professional, and sometimes I just crack and I'll put it on the corner of my screen and call it good, but it's okay. So
you'll be in a bad mood.
Yeah,
if it's a bad result. Yeah.
Well, the Leicester City game was a Friday.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So like they were having a go. Like the kids were telling me to switch teams. And I was like, hey, it doesn't work like that, kids. You can't do that. Like it's not allowed. And by the way, I'm in a little deep at this moment. Yeah.
I'm a little invested in the project.
Yeah. So it's not how it works, but thanks. I imagine. I mean, when I went over and was in the UK, it was equally weird to not have to wake up and have the game on right away and just have it be dark when it was over, and like that all are strange things. So it's I'll take this anytime.
Yeah, sure.
The rest of my day in sunny Southern California.
Absolutely.
It was cold this morning. I would say it was like 2 degrees.
Chilly. Yeah.
So, but now I'm not wearing a jacket, so it's nice. I don't know. I just want to say, first of all, thanks for doing this again.
No worries.
I've had a wonderful conversation. It's always great to do this and spend a little bit of time. I mean, for Saints kind of going forward, getting back to the team, like, what do you think, what realistically, like, given we've had the poorest of runs and maybe third best team in the league since week 13, right? Like coming into, or maybe even including today. I haven't checked since we've been here, but we've been informed. What do you, like, which of those two teams is the real Southampton? Or are we somewhere in the middle?
I think we're perhaps somewhere in the middle. I think in terms of the quality's clearly been there. It's just been the structure and the formation. So you've got to give a certain amount of blame and credit to Hasenhüttl in that regard, in terms of it's taken him this long to figure out what he should be doing with those players. But yeah, I mean, if we end the table around 12th, like you said earlier, I think a lot of Saints fans would be, quite content with that. Yeah. With the run of form that we've had, a lot of people were talking about Europe and pushing for those places, which would be great as well. But there's a lot of good sides around this part of the table, but there are also a lot of inconsistent sides like Arsenal and Spurs and the likes. So yeah, it's
well, and I think that's there are a lot of good players and a lot of good teams. But there are reasons that some of those players and teams aren't, they don't consistently hit the top of the table. Liverpool has been so good this season, not because they've always been great, but because they have consistently done just enough in some instances and dominated on others. But even when they play poorly, they have been able to get wins, right?
Get result.
And we don't do that enough. And I think the consistency is what will haunt us, because we always wonder why aren't we more consistent? Like, it doesn't seem that hard to just go out and do the same thing, but then I listen to the podcast and I'm like, well, that wasn't very consistent. Like it goes up and down as well. So it's still, though, when I think about it, it's hard to understand like why it just doesn't work itself out to be like that more often. So it'll be interesting to watch. And I wonder, though, also, and this is coming out of nowhere, but if we were to finish in a European place, does that make Hasenhüttl more or less likely to stay? Like, does that bring more teams kind of calling for him over the summer? And does he look at the squad and say, it's not enough? The owner is on this kind of self-improvement model where we have to, self-sustaining model, I should say.
So we got a Koeman situation all over again.
Yeah. Or does he go like, no, I can do it with this squad, and we only need a couple of pieces? You just kind of wonder, like, we will always have things to worry about and complain about, whether it's relegation and he stays or Europa League and he stays. Like, what's going to happen? And so I think it's always going to be there, and there's always something for us to worry about or complain about or whatever. But right now, I would say that, I think I said it in the newsletter this week, I've just really enjoyed it recently. It's been hard to not enjoy the run we've been on and the way we've been playing, and I think you'll agree that it's just been nice to see the team be successful.
100%. And I think also seeing the result against Leicester, where we ended up being first on Match of the Day on our own merit, not because we beat Leicester or is there anything romantic about the return fixture after being defeated 9-0. We dominated that game. I mean, you look at the stats, we absolutely dominated that.
Yeah.
So, they were lucky still to be in it. So it's things like that fill a Saints fan with pride.
Right.
But then, like what you say, if we do too well, do we have to worry about losing the manager or, losing key players? It's an alarm bell for any Saints fan to know that it's never ever going to get any better, in terms of that fear of what if. But
I would say for anybody listening, the key player is Cedric. We don't, but he's already off he's off this summer anyways. It doesn't matter unless somebody wants him right now.
Yeah, we'll take offers for Cedric.
Yeah, but, I'd probably be willing to play somebody out of position at right back for the rest of the season if it meant that we got money for Cedric. But that's not going to happen. But I mean, he was back, I think, going back to the Wolves game. He seemed to be back to his old ways a little bit today. He put in a great cross for the goal for Long.
Right.
Did some good things, but defensively we have issues popping up again. And maybe it was just a kind of convenient run of matches where we didn't get exposed or opponents didn't take chances even when they're there. But today, when we allowed the other team to have the ball a little further up the pitch and we weren't winning it in their half, we got into trouble. And I think that's back to the old Saints. I think that's the real thing is if we don't dictate play and keep it at a certain way, if we start to take our foot off the gas, we can get exposed. And I don't think that's anything to do with anything. I think it's just the way it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the run of our games that we had before the turnaround, I think the fullback positions were something that I could see. Like, we needed to strengthen there, and actually Hasenhüttl did publicly say, this is an area where I'd like to strengthen. And really from that moment, Cedric has stepped up, Bertrand's been playing a lot better. But I think, with today's result, perhaps that might be a little bit of a wake-up call to say, actually, we do need a bit more competition in those areas. Jan Valery could be coming back soon, so we'll see about that. But yeah, I still think those areas are ones that we need to look at, especially for the sort of football that Hasenhüttl wants to play, that high-pressing football, where there's a lot of running involved, especially for those positions.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that Hasenhüttl said in his press conference on Thursday was that the mood kind of shifted around signing players, and we shouldn't just sign players because we can, even if there are players that are out there that might, we don't just need to do it because we can, and it's, I don't know, they're not saying hi to us, I don't think.
No, it's not our party.
I don't know.
I don't think they're Wolves fans.
No, they're not. But it went from, we're definitely looking to improve these areas to, well, if we can, or if they're the right player, and the language is starting to go towards, these deals are not coming, and I do worry a little bit, because I think we're one injury away in the wide defensive areas from being in a real world of hurt, and having to see guys like Danzo or Yoshida or whoever play out there, and the last thing I want to do is break up our midfield partnership to move out there, and so there are worries there for us, but at the end of the day, I don't think the club's going to panic buy in January, because Carrillo being the biggest thing that doesn't work, and there were a couple of articles in The Athletic about the money you spend in January and how many points it gets you, and it's not very many, so maybe it's not the thing, but it just the team may have to do something to improve, and whether they will or not, I don't have an answer, but we'll wait and see. But I don't know. When are you back at St. Mary's?
I'm back at St. Mary's. I managed to convince the family to go to the FA Cup game next Saturday.
Okay.
So but back there for that one.
Okay.
So
what are you anticipating in terms of a squad? You think heavily rotated?
I'm not sure, actually. I mean, I think it depends on what happens on Wednesday night. I think it's Wednesday night. We're playing Palace away, I think it is.
Tuesday or Wednesday?
Tuesday or Wednesday, something midweek. But, Spurs kind of look like a side on the ropes, really. I mean, without Kane at the front there. We were in control a lot of that game that we beat them at St. Mary's 1-0, so I think it's certainly possible to do. They're not particularly good away, so why not? But whether or not Hasenhüttl feels that he should be rotating the squad, because I think the following weekend we're at Anfield, I think. So we've got a week to prepare for that. But
well, and I mean, realistically, what are you going to prepare for that? Like, Liverpool are good, although I think if we beat Liverpool, that would just be...
Yeah, absolutely.
Liverpool and Leicester, we're good.
Yeah.
I think Saints fans will appreciate it.
If we were to take their unbeaten run away from them, I think that would be our Premier League title right there.
Yeah, because if they go unbeaten and so that's all the Arsenal fans are upset forever,
right?
And that's the Liverpool fans are already almost intolerable. So the fact that that'll just continue will be awful. But anyway, well, do you have anything else you want to talk about?
No, I think that's pretty much covers it from me.
Okay, well, Mike, thank you so much again for doing this. It was kind of it was a lot of fun, and it was I didn't want to bombard you with questions because I knew you were working, but it was I'm going to show up and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And we got away from the guys handing out tickets to I don't know what on the corner, but we didn't go.
Free CDs, I think it was.
Free, okay.
I'm making inverted commas just in case the listeners can't see my hands there.
Yeah.
But,
I'm just glad we didn't get whatever it is. But people can follow you once again on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, Matchday Vlogs, and on Twitter at Match Vlogs.
That's right, yeah.
And the YouTube channel, link in the show notes. Thanks a lot, man.
Absolutely, and also a big thank you for you for making the drive down. I certainly appreciate it. I mean, it's not 5,000 miles in the sky, but it's certainly 4 hours on the road that I certainly appreciate. So thanks for joining.
It was a lot of fun. Appreciate it. And that does it for this episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you've enjoyed it. Special thanks this week goes out to both guests, both Carl Anka, who you can find on Twitter at Anchorman616. You can get his writing at The Athletic. There's a free trial, all that stuff. Links are in the show notes, as are the details. Special thanks to Carl for taking the time out of his day to chat with me. Hopefully, we'll have him on the show again soon. Also on the show this week was Mike Smale of Matchday Vlogs. You can get in touch with him on Twitter at MatchVlogs or on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Matchday Vlogs. Check it out. Check out his YouTube channel. Always fun to be able to see other Saints fans in person and get to talk to them and just share some time, because it just simply doesn't happen every day to those of us who live here in the States. Special thanks also goes out to Chris Thomas, who is the newest patron of the show. Him and all the patrons have a special place in my heart, and they get some special stuff too, including access to a Patreon-only Discord channel, priority for having their questions answered on the show, and the $5 a month patrons get an extra episode of the show or so per month. So you can head on over to patreon.com/SFC Delivery if you are interested in doing that. And if not, thanks a lot. Just be sure to subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Acast, Google Play, TuneIn Radio, or wherever you get your podcast to make sure that you get future episodes delivered to you as soon as they are ready. If you want to follow the show on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, you can do that. We are at SFCDELL_IVERY on both Instagram and Twitter. We're also on Facebook at facebook.com/SFC Delivery. The show would not be possible without the partners of the show. That includes Matt Beeling, who does the logo of the show, and the Southampton page, where you should go for all of your Southampton FC news and needs. Be sure to follow the Southampton page. It'll keep you up to date with everything going on during the transfer window, midweek, press conferences, all of that stuff is there. All music for the show comes courtesy of the Free Music Archive at freemusicarchive.org. The intro song is Epic Song by Boxcat Games, and the end of show credits that you're listening to right now is Aim is True by Poddington Bear. That is going to do it for this week. We'll be back on Friday with the newsletter. Subscribe at southamptondelivery.com if you are interested. And until next time, remember that together, we march on. We're good. Do you know his name? Do you know his name?
Sorry?
Do you know his name?
No. I forgot it. Should we include him in the episode?
We should at least let's see if his name is on here. Tucker
was our server today.
We gave him we told him just to choose, right?
Yeah, we did.
We gave him a couple of choices to just surprise us. And he made good recommendation.
Yeah, I was certainly happy. I mean, I understand he's off to Washington. He was telling us after this shift today.
It will be much colder. Yeah. They will not have outdoor seating in January. I can promise you. But he's been good. I feel bad because he keeps checking on us, and we're like, nope, we're good. We're just going to keep hanging out. Anyway, whatever.